Thank you. Okay, well, welcome everybody to the May 6th, 2024. My goodness, the years are going by, of the PSC retiree chapter. Samantha Sherry of the staff is helping us out today. Erwin Yelowitz is taking notes, and Bonnie and I are here. Poor Diane Mena had to take a trip to Paris, so she's enjoying herself there, I'm sure. So before I introduce the speaker and the topic for the day, why am I seeing? All right. Can you see me, people?
Yes.
Oh, okay, because I don't see myself. Not that I have to see myself. Before I talk about our speaker for today and the topic for today, I just want to point out at the beginning of the meeting that you should have received a beautiful invitation to our first in-person gathering in really almost 4 years, and that's a luncheon that we're going to be having on June 10th at John Jay. So if you haven't received that information, write to us and let us know. We'll make sure that you get it. Okay. I'm sorry, but I don't, it's very frustrating. I don't see people. What am I doing wrong? Okay, well, you can hear me. And as Arlene said in our little chit chat in advance of the beginning of the meeting, to talk about noise, you need to use your ears. So I'll figure out a way where I can see everybody, but I'll be using my ears, and so will you. So Arlene Bronzoff is a PhD, professor emerita from CUNY. She worked at Lehman. Currently, she's a researcher, public advocate, and consultant on the adverse impacts of noise on health worldwide, and has been involved in working to lessen noise pollution for nearly 5 decades. In New York City, she serves on the board of GROW New York City and oversees its noise activities. She assisted in the updating of the New York Noise Code in 2007 and is frequently quoted in the New York Times. So today the topic is impacts of noise on mental and physical health and well-being. The talk will highlight the growing number of studies that have linked noise to physiological and psychological disorders. For example, hearing loss, stress, loss of sleep, cardiovascular disorders, and learning. These studies have validated the many complaints people make about noises from road traffic, aviation, construction, and our neighbors. Furthermore, the talk will examine ways that noise impacts can be reduced. For example, noise ordinances, quieter tools, less noisy aircraft, and more respectful neighbors. So without further ado, I introduce you to Arlene. She'll talk for about 40 minutes, and then we'll have a Q&A and a discussion. Then we'll hear from Debbie, and then we'll hear from Michael Foley. So welcome, everybody. Let's get started, and I will figure out how I can get back to the right screen. So Arlene, take it away. It's yours.
Thank you, Anne. And thank you for inviting me to speak to my colleagues. I have been long affiliated with CUNY. I'm a Hunter College graduate. And Hunter College took a chance on this young woman when I graduated at 19 and made me a teaching assistant at 19 and a full-time member of the faculty at 21. So I tell people that not only did CUNY give me my education, which was key and valuable, it gave me my job, and now it's given me a pension. So CUNY has been a strong part of my life. But how did I get into noise? Well, first of all, I'm an environmental psychologist. I don't know if people are familiar with environmental psychology, but it started essentially at CUNY at the Graduate Center. And it started there, and it had strong support from the Graduate Center. And I, being part of CUNY, became interested in that. And so that started my interest in a field that was very new at the time that I got involved. But then how did it get to noise? Well, I was teaching a course at Lehman College, and I talked about environmental psychology, and it turned out I did mention noise and the impact on health. And at the end of the class, a student of mine came up to me and said, Dr. Bronzaft, we have a noise problem in our community. This was Inwood, Washington Heights. She said, my son goes to a school that's adjacent to an elevated train track, and the noisy trains intrude on the classrooms every few minutes. And the students really are having a difficult time, as are the teachers. And she said to me, we're going to file a lawsuit against the city of New York. To which I responded, well, my husband's an attorney, and I think when you file a lawsuit on damages, you have to prove it. And she turned to me and she said, well, can you help find the proof to support our claims that our children are not learning? And so this was the late 70s. I approached the principal of the school, and it turned out he was an activist. And I said, look, I would like to look at the reading scores of children adjacent to the tracks and the reading scores of children on the quiet side to determine if indeed the noise from the trains coming in every 4.5 minutes was affecting their learning. And he provided me with the scores. Interestingly, the city also did the noise measurements for me. That's a little unusual. The Department of Environmental Protection doing the measurements for a researcher in New York City. Well, I conducted a study and found that by the 6th grade, the children adjacent to the track were nearly a year behind in reading. And they were distressed about being in that classroom, and the teachers were having a difficult time. And so, as a professor, I published the study in a peer-reviewed journal. And the study did get attention. But did I help the children? The mother did not say to me, do a study. She said, can you help our children? And so the activist part of me, yes, I come out of the anti-war movement of the late 60s. So the activist part of me kicked in, and I went to the Transit Authority, and I did have some knowledge of transit. I had had a position as an advisor on transit. And I learned they were testing out a procedure to quiet the noise on tracks, and urged them to consider testing as a pilot study adjacent to the school, and they agreed. I went to the Board of Education and asked if they would put acoustical tiles in the classroom ceilings, and the Board of Education agreed. I know you're going to say to me, how did you get 2 city agencies to respond affirmatively to your requests? I use the word miracles, but on the serious side, I had the media, I had reporters come to the school, parents, public officials. There was a lot of attention on that study. And so now the abatements were put into place, and a public official came up to me and said, Dr. Bronzaft, did the abatements work? Well, if you had walked into the classroom before I started the study, you would have said, how could children possibly learn in this noise? And if you had gone to the classroom after the abatements, you would have seen how much quieter it was. But again, I was asked to do a study. And am pleased to say that with the abatements in place, the children on both sides of the building were reading at the same level. Yes, noise intrudes on learning. It intruded on the teachers and their well-being. And when you make classrooms quieter, children do better. These two studies are considered the landmark studies in the field and are cited often. In fact, they just were cited only about a month ago. They're frequently referenced, but other studies did follow those studies and confirmed that noise intrudes on learning. People and children cannot learn and even work in a noisy environment. And those two studies essentially changed my life. I said that I retired from Lehman early at the age of 55. And my husband couldn't understand that because he knew I really loved teaching, having started when I was 19. And I said to him, something else will find me. And sure enough, noise did. And then I became very involved, not simply in demonstrating that noise has an adverse effect on us, but in saying, what can we do about it? And I think the wonderful thing about those two studies, and the findings were important. You still have to have data to support your hypothesis. But the wonderful thing that was demonstrated is that you can do something to lessen the noise. And when you do, children in this case benefit, but so do people. So now let's look at this field. Let's look at what sound is and what is noise. Now, I think all of you understand sound, a physical phenomenon. And when the sound hits our ears, whatever we're listening to, the ears pick up the sound is transmitted to the brain, the temporal lobe, and the sounds are interpreted. And that's called sound. But then what does it make it noise? Years ago, the definition was that sounds that we don't like, that intrude upon us, that bother us, that are unwanted, these sounds are identified as noise. And the unwanted nature or the fact that it intruded is interpreted in another part of the brain. So sound is a physical phenomenon. Noise is a psychological determination that the sounds are being intrusive and unwanted. But today, we can go beyond that. Noise is made up of sounds that are harmful. When it comes to hearing, even if you like the sound, here the definition of unwanted could be put aside. Pete Townsend, The Who, loved the sound, but that still adversely affected his ears. So that if you like the sounds you're listening to, if you're a musician and you don't protect your ears, you can actually harm your hearing. So loud sounds, whether you love them or not, can be harmful. But now let's look at the other sounds that we don't like to hear. And by the way, they don't have to be loud. As an example, I say, try to fall asleep next to a bathroom with a dripping faucet. That's not very loud, but it's intrusive and bothersome. And if you are studying, as my daughter was in her room, she could listen to music at a low level and enjoy it. But when the neighbor above put on her music and my daughter could hear it, it intruded on her studies. So that when we look at noise, and I think most people will agree, it's a sound that we really don't want to be exposed to. Yes, you may love your music, and you turn it on at 6 a.m. in the morning. But I, your neighbor, I'm sleeping at that time, and I do not wish to hear it. So that would be sort of an easy definition between and delineating sound from noise. Now, when we look at noise, it's being considered a more serious pollutant today. When I first did that research over 45 years ago, I must say I didn't have that many studies that I could refer to, though there were a few. Studies had been conducted to show that children that lived in apartment buildings closer to the lower grounds where it was noisier did not do as well at school as children who lived in upper floors. So there was some research that came around. Actually, if you think about it, New York City is often identified as a noisy city, and probably maybe the noisiest city. But in New York, we had ordinances curbing intrusive sounds going back to the 1930s. And New York City has a strong noise code, which I'll talk about. But as we began to recognize, and I have to thank psychologists, and one of them was Harold Prashansky, who at CUNY was instrumental in the development of environmental psychology. And I knew Harold Prashansky. These psychologists made us more aware of intrusive pollutants in our environment. Environmental psychology is defined as what in the environment interacts with the individual, such as crowding. Notice in New York City how quickly people walk. You know why they walk that quickly? One of the hypotheses, it's crowded. They want to get out of there. So we have in the field of environmental psychology an understanding that we can be impacted by elements in our environment. But then how do we get something done about it? See, that was the important thing to me. I understand as a researcher, we have to demonstrate that noise is indeed harmful. I feel my two studies did give us excellent data on the fact that noise is harmful to learning, but when you correct it and create a quieter environment, learning improves. But we need studies. However, we also need actions. Now, you're going to be surprised when you might be, unless you know quite a bit about noise already, you might be surprised as to which president gave us the Noise Control Act in Washington, as well as the Clean Air Act. That was Richard Nixon. Richard Nixon was the president when we got the Clean Air Act, when we got the Office of Environmental Protection Agency. By the way, he set up the Environmental Protection Agency, actually named a very good person to head it. And we also had the Office of Noise Abatement and Control within the Department of Environmental Protection. So if we can go back to 1972, you will see the federal government in the United States was really ahead of the game because it recognized that noise was harmful. In fact, if anyone wishes to come to my home, I do have quite a bit of information pertaining to noise. I really have the pamphlets that were distributed by the Environmental Protection Agency, and I cite one of them. It's called Noise, a Health Problem, and that was late 70s. Noise, a health problem. The Environmental Protection Agency did not say, is noise a problem? Do we have to do more studies to identify whether it is? It stated very early on that noise was a health problem. And to show you how up to date the Environmental Protection Agency was, it quoted the study I had done in its pamphlet. right shortly after that I had published it, so that we had action at the federal level. We were trying to do something to lessen the noise in the environment and also enhance the quiet, because quiet is to health as noise to good health as noise is to harmful. However, even though there was activity at the Environmental Protection Agency, excellent person put in charge, they were publishing pamphlets, distributing materials, getting involved with the states, supporting research. The next president after Nixon, Ford, kept the office, and so did Carter. But when Ronald Reagan got elected in 80, he decided to shut down the Office of Noise Abatement and defund it essentially. And people ask me, well, why did he do it? And I came up with my own hypothesis. It's a hypothesis. What was happening in the early 80s is there was a move to get quieter products in our homes. It was called Buy Quiet. To recognize, when you recognize noise is harmful, you also look at what is intruding on us, what is disturbing us. Loud vacuum cleaners, loud cooling units, loud dishwashers, loud refrigerators, loud construction tools. Today, of course, we know loud airplanes, loud transportation. And I hypothesize that the industry pushed back and said, look, we'll look into the impacts of our tools. We'll look and see if we can make quieter washing machines and dryers, but let us do it at our own pace. Don't push us. So it's my hypothesis that the Buy Quiet program that got a pushback from industry, and the office was essentially defunded. But we can't just blame Reagan. There were presidents that followed Ronald Reagan, correct? We had the Bushes, we had Clinton, we had Obama, we now have Biden. Has anybody thought of refunding the office? The aircraft industry is imposing so much noise on people across this country. I'll talk more about it. Have we pressure on the airlines? And so the office is still shut. What happened in the late 90s is a Congresswoman, Nita Lowey, decided that the office should be refunded. And so she got signatures from her colleagues supporting the refunding of the office. And in the Senate, then Senator Torricelli introduced a bill and got some support from the senators to refund the office. But unfortunately, no vote was taken and those bills died. We now have a bill that has been introduced by Congresswoman Meng from Queens, New York, and she has some co-sponsors. We don't have a bill in the Senate that's comparable, that's asking for this office to be refunded. So essentially, we're living in a country that does not have a federal hand in trying to curb noise. And we know that more people have recognized that noise is harmful to health. I'm not going to cite all those studies. I'm going to give you a reference at the end so you can go one place and get the information. We know that noise causes cardiovascular disorders. We have studies that people that live near airports have increased risk to go to the hospital for cardiovascular disorders. We have sleep studies. We have the learning studies. We have studies of stress. We've identified the sources. We know transportation, whether it's cars and definitely airlines, that noise is intrusive and harmful. We have the data. We have the knowledge, but we don't have the action, unfortunately. It's been left to the states and to the cities. Now, some cities have jumped in and have indeed passed ordinances to try to curb noise. And since I'm talking in New York City, I'm going to focus on New York City. I told you that in the 1930s, we had started programs to curb noise, introduce legislation. In the early 70s, we introduced the noise code, which is a code that defines noise, and it does see it today as a health issue, and then it stipulates those areas which we can limit the sounds, and if indeed they're exceeded, or other areas where you cannot have loud sounds and they are in place, we can also issue violations. So we have the noise code. It was updated in 2008. It's now 2024. If you ask me, I think it's time to really revise it and update it. What the city council has been doing, it's been modifying it a bit and adding some clauses. I really think the entire code should be revisited and put into place, updated 2024. So what we can count on today is recognizing that the studies are plentiful. In New York City, in addition to my work on learning, I've conducted 2 studies on the effects of aircraft noise on individuals who live exposed to the overhead aircraft. And yes, it does impede their well-being. Remember, a person's state of health should be a good state of health, not just be alive. People that live near airports cannot use their backyards because it's noisy, have to keep their windows closed. And you hear a siren, I know, that's just going by my home. I live near a hospital. But the aircraft noise they're exposed to, even with their windows closed, they can be awakened at 5:45 in the morning, as my grandson is, who lives in Queens, by aircraft noise. So here we are in 2024. The data, and I have to add, and many of the studies have been done abroad. We don't have the financial support we should have for the studies that are conducted in the US. I have to say I'm very thankful to a congressperson in Queens who cared about noise in his area and was able to get us a grant. In part, it came from the Environmental Protection Agency so that we could do a study in Queens on aircraft noise. And it was the borough president of Staten Island that allowed us to do another aircraft noise study on Staten Island. But those studies to be funded are not that common. And so much more of the research has been done abroad. And it turns out that some of the Americans say, well, we need to do the studies in the US, to which I say, we're all human beings. And I think the noise that affects people in the UK, in Switzerland, those people have pretty much the same DNA that I have, and that I would generalize from those findings. So here we are, we're in 2024. The body of literature is overwhelming. The amount of interest that has come, most recently, I say that I get interviewed from the New York Times, and the New York Times sent the interviewer to my home, so she could see the room where I have a lot of studies, a lot of research, sent a photographer to my home. That may be fine as far as my getting some attention, but what was really getting the attention was noise. And that article dealt with noise cameras, which I'll talk about. And then we had another article that she wrote later on that dealt with horn honking, in which she quoted me. So let us look at the sources to which the people listening to my talk are exposed to daily. All right. Many of you are probably exposed to transportation sounds. I know that people get disturbed by those souped up vehicles that zoom through the night in their apartments, awaking them. They get very upset by that. And that is quite common in a number of neighborhoods. Also, people are very disturbed by the loud noises of construction. And if you walk through neighborhoods, you'll see so much construction taking place, and you hear those noises. The aircraft noise problem is so great that there are about 40 groups across the country that are advocates for quieter aircraft and are battling aircraft noise. And then there's the one that is very common. It's called neighbor noise. Your neighbor plays your music too loudly. Your neighbor will not put the carpeting on the floor so that when she puts on her high heels at 6 a.m, you hear her. They are shouting in your hallways. Neighbor noise is excessive in New York. It's not just I who say it, but let's look at the study of the 311 complaints. You know that noise is a major complaint to 311. And it turned out that a study was done by the controller for the state of New York and said that noise is a major problem in New York City. But what the study showed also is that 311 calls generally don't lead to any solutions, any remedies. The people that call, the message is taken. Oh, yes, you have this truck that's being parked in front of this building from 6 to 8 a.m. every morning. Yes, we'll take that complaint, but does it get resolved? So while New York City has a noise code, as I told you, updated in 2008, and there's real interest in trying to get these noise complaints resolved. We have, now you ask, who does it? Well, that's key. Laws, and I stress this, laws are very important. I respect the laws. But if we don't enforce them, are they really worth the paper they're printed on? I made that comment to one of the former mayors. He didn't take very well to that comment because he had just updated the code. But he said a few weeks later that, you know what, Arlene, you were probably right. We have to enforce our noise laws. We have to enforce our noise ordinances. And since the federal government left noise control to the states and then they to the cities may be passing these ordinances. But the major complaint, as evidenced by the controller study of 311, is that the laws are not enforced. Partially, it may be because it's difficult. You may come to a person's home to measure the noisy cooler on the roof of the opposite building, and that day it's not on. We understand that. But for the most part, I hear from people that the laws are not being enforced. Now, who enforces them? In New York City, DEP, Department of Environmental Protection, is responsible for some of the enforcement, but the police also responsible. And you have to know which law the police can enforce and which law the DEP. That's left up to the person. But then again, the other thing about New York City is we live in apartment buildings. We live in co-ops. What about the sounds in buildings? Who's responsible for that enforcement? Well, it turns out it's the landlord, because people are entitled under a warranty of habitability to have their apartment livable. So then you have to pressure the landlord, the managing agent, and that's true in co-op buildings. And people have difficulty in getting those rules abided by. And I know this personally because I serve on Grow NYC. And here's what I would say. I would urge all of you to go to the website of Grow NYC, www.grownyc.org, and then go to the noise section. And you will get the studies I've referred to. You will hear podcasts. You will see a section that talks about the harmful effects. But then there's another thing that's on the section. It says any New Yorker that goes to that section and needs to discuss a noise problem, you can call Arlene Bronsaft. Now, I want to ask you, how many calls do you think I get? I get a lot. And what I want to tell you is put aside the studies, which I think are important. If I had not done my studies on the noise impacts on students' learning, I don't think I would have been able to correct the problem. But listen to the voices of people who are exposed to noise. Just hear their anguish. And even though I haven't resolved the problem of the caller, in as many cases I can, I have listened. And that is one thing they really are so comfortable with. I'm like the first person they've listened. So let me end by saying this. Noise is a harmful pollutant. It is harmful to our health and well-being. And while you may not have evidenced any medical issues, stress, unhappiness, discomfort, those are robbing you of a decent quality of life. All of us should be able to practice the one thing I find very important, and that's respecting our neighbors. If you respect people, you will not intrude your sounds on them. You will keep it to yourself. I think common decency, caring about other people, if we did that, and I extend that to music venues, keep the music within the venue. Don't open the doors and let it go out. I extend that to the FAA, the Federal Aviation Administration, which I call Friends of Airlines and Airports. I extend it to the government. If you really respect people, if you know that noise is harmful and you respect people, then you will do something about it. And each one of us can do something about it. It starts with us. And that's in the brochure that you can receive from Grow NYC. And let me add one other thing. If you go to the Department of Environmental Protection site, you will see a sound and noise education module. It deals with curricula for children from the lowest grades to the highest, teaching them about the dangers of noise, the advantages of quiet, and it gives them examples of how each one of them can make a difference in his or her neighborhood to lessen the sounds. I leave it up to you now, and thank you so much for allowing me to talk.
Thank you, Arlene. That was quite fascinating, and I think we can go to questions and comments. And I think the first hand I see is Susan Wartzman. Susan.
Thank you. Thank you, Arlene. I just wanted to comment as an audiologist. I appreciated your comment about music because many people don't consider music noise and they cause problems for themselves by going to concerts seating next to speakers blaring at 100 plus decibels, listening to their iPods at loud sounds, loud
True.
levels. And it's such an important issue that people, not just noise that other people cause us, but noise that we cause ourselves.
True.
And one additional comment, we have seen a lot of kids with auditory processing and attention deficit disorders who have problems understanding speech and noise. And that is another component of how it affects learning in the classroom. So thank you.
Thank you. Let me just stress, protect your ears at all costs. You are in control of that. You may think the music is loud and you're enjoying it. You may pay with a hearing deficit. So please, thank you. And you can see that in our curriculum. Thank you.
Doris Hart.
Yes. Am I unmuted? Can you hear
Yes,
me?
you are, Doris.
Okay, great. Look, thank you so much for your work and your talk. I really appreciate it. But as I was listening to you, the ambulances went by
Yes.
and it cut off some of your speech. And when I was out today this morning, all those ambulances, I mean, can anything be done? Those sirens are
Yes.
horrendous, even at night. Why do they have to be so noisy?
Let me address that. I should have spoken about that as well. Thank you. If you go into a European city, you will find a less offensive sound.
Right.
The answer to quieting things, I told you, was not the ways to do it, but the will. We do have an active group in New York City that are trying to get the hospitals to explore the less offensive sounds. The sounds could be of a different quality, be as effective in getting the ambulance through, but at the same time, not be as offensive as they are. So that group is still working on it. The problems we have is that we don't do the things that we should. The other thing, let's take tools. I did mention construction tools. The noise code says that we should use less noisy tools. I think that's an error because it's given as a choice. I think it should be a mandate. We should use the less noisy tools. So if you check, if I had more time, I'd spend it on garden equipment, lawn equipment. My friend Jamie Banks heads a group, and I'm part of Quiet Communities, in which we focus on using equipment that is less noisy, and some states are mandating it. So it turns out that if you explore the different sounds, just as the New York City Transit Authority was able to lessen the noise on the tracks. By the way, at first they may have been angry at me for bringing such negative attention to them. They then asked me to be their consultant. And I worked with the Transit Authority, helped them develop a quiet attraction motor, worked with them on the rail. And it turned out that when you quiet things down, when you have a smooth rail, a smooth wheel, you will have less likelihood of a problem on the system, a breakdown. And they would not have asked me to advise them if I didn't show them that when things are less noisy, that means less likely to break down and you're saving money. So the Transit Authority kept me on because my advice saved them money and not costly. And I hope that helps. And I am working with that group.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Barbara Linton. Hi, Barbara.
Hi, how are you?
Okay.
Since I've been retired, and I guess when I used to go to work, I didn't, I wasn't home to hear the noise. I live in a garden apartment, and almost every Thursday, starting in the spring, and it goes all the way till probably the end of November, December, we have gardeners who come and mow the lawn. Well, and also the leaf blowers. So not only if I'm home do I have to shut my windows to stop the smell, It also mitigates a tiny bit of the noise. Now, I know that, and I had complained to Representative Schulman last year, and it seemed that last year Gail Brewer had introduced number 959 to you stop gas-powered leaf blowers. And when I called up this year, it wasn't passed last year,
Yeah,
and it seems they only have 7 sponsors. And I don't know how many sponsors they need exactly, but how do you get, people in other,
okay.
Districts to urge their people to complain? I can understand when you live in a place with lots of apartment buildings, you may not have the torture of leaf blowers as opposed to something that's a little more, suburban and, green. So, I mean, how can
Okay.
it get done?
You want me to help you?
Yes.
Okay, so you're going to have to become an activist. You're going to have to get a group of people that feel as you do. And I will get the person who has been most active in this nationwide, Jamie, who has all the data and the information to assist you. And I do know Gail, and I know she's introduced legislation. She's been interested in noise issues for a long time. But it really is going to take more activism to get that done. But I will give you, you'll get my email address. You contact me. I'll work with you and get you the best people that have worked on this nationwide. How's that? Is that fair?
Yes, that's
you've
true.
got to
But you were also saying, and it's true, technically, I mean, I assume that their leaf blowers are breaking the noise pollution
Some of them
thing.
probably are.
So we have like a very nice law, but if it's not something that's effective, it's almost, very frustrating.
Well, it turned out it's being introduced in other cities and states. And I will get you the person who really is expert in the field to work with you. But you need a group.
Well, that's
and that you're gonna, you have to become sort of the activist and get some people organized. But I think you'll be able to do it. I promise I'll work with you to see if we can get this done in New York City.
okay.
And
Thank you.
try to get it enforced. You're welcome.
Thank you. Erwin Yelowitz?
Yes, Barbara Linton said essentially what I was going to say. Those of us who live in the suburbs, city people may think that we're living in a quiet environment. Of course, we're living in a very noisy environment, and lawn service equipment is the major culprit. And it goes on all year long, because even in the wintertime, you have snow plowing happening. So it is a major problem of noise pollution in the suburbs. And so I would just echo what Barbara said, that this is an issue that extends far beyond New York City's limits.
Will you get involved in your community to try to make it quieter?
I certainly would like to, although.
Okay, so I'm pairing the two of you together. And look, in numbers, there's a greater likelihood that things happen. I did say that one study I did had such an impact. It seems miraculous. Remember, I used the word miracle, but it does demonstrate that people really have more power than they think. And I will link you up with the people that have had the best success in this field to help you. All right? You're joining? I got 2 people now. Okay, thank you.
People are going to be afraid to ask their questions, Arlene, because you're putting them to work.
Well, you know what?
But you're right.
That's an interesting point. But you know what? The pleasure you get, the children across this country that live near airports, do you know the FAA spent $400 million to quiet the schools near those airports so that the children have a better chance of learning? Do you know how pleased I feel about that, having done those 2 studies? So remember, the 2 people I said I would help. So I work with people internationally on the issue. And you know what? The fact that it's gotten this heightened attention all over the world now, I feel good about it. And yes, I found something after teaching.
You certainly did. Okay, we have Laura Fishman next. Hi,
Yeah,
Laura.
thank you, Arlene, for your
Thank-
talk. Thank you very much. And for your energy and enthusiasm. My question relates to tinnitus or tinnitus,
Mhm.
which personally I suffer from. My understanding is not that much is known about it. It's more of a neurological than an audiological issue. But is it caused by noise, and do loud
could.
noises make it worse?
Yes, it could be. Yes, the answer, I know someone who's a specialist in that area, who really knows that area well. So I could get you more information. If you contact me, I will direct it and one thing you have to do is you have to protect your ears now and avoid noisy areas. You don't want to make it worse. But if you want more information, email me. I will get you someone that will get you the best information, unless you go to your audiologist. Does your audiologist have the kind of knowledge in that area? I don't know. But I do know someone who suffered from it and then became a specialist. So I contact that person for you.
I will, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Sarah Wilkins?
Yes, hi, good afternoon.
Hi.
Can you hear me? You can hear me.
Yes.
Okay, great. Arlene, great presentation. Thank you. And I'm sure you hear from and about barking dogs as a noise issue. And you know, when you live near a dog park, as I do, it doesn't happen all the time, but when it does happen and you get a bunch of dogs going at one time, it's incessant. And it's really hard to hear. And just because I'm near a dog park and the whole neighborhood seems to be like a place for people to go with their dogs all over the place. And so is that something that 311 gets a lot of? And do they pay any attention to that?
And that's a very hard one to catch. Remember, by the time someone would go out, that person isn't there. The best way to handle that, I would think, is with education. Have you contacted your local council person on that? As far as putting up signage, maybe? I do believe in signs. We used to have signs that said, "Don't honk." And yes, there were people who violated it. Just like we have signs that say, "Curb your dog." I do think education is key. And yes, we know that's the park where the dogs are going and they're going to bark. But if in some way educationally, I don't know if you could put a fine on it. Do you understand? You're asking whether there's a law that they're violating that they can receive a penalty for. Is that the question? I don't think so. But that doesn't mean that you can't inform people to try to restrain that activity. And where do you live? I don't,
What happened?
what happened?
I think we lost her.
Yeah, because I
Not
would say
able to talk. Okay.
she could contact a local council person and talk to her about it.
Okay. All right. Before I see Tom Agnotti, but Doris Weisberg is trying to figure out how to ask a question. Doris, are you there? All right, let's go to Tom. Tom Agnotti. Hi, Tom.
Hi, Tom. I know Tom.
Yeah, I know you do.
Okay.
Ask unmute, Tom.
Okay, can you hear me
Okay.
now?
Yes, we
Hi.
can.
Oh, hi, Arlene. That's
We
great.
have-
Wonderful to hear you again. And you just filled the plate with so much, but I have only a couple of other things I'd like you to address. And I know you're aware of the environmental impact statements that get made for new developments throughout the city. Certainly, we both worked on some of those.
Yes.
And they, when it comes to the noise section, it sort of drifts into a foreign land that nobody seems to pay much attention to. But environmental impact statements, I think in general, although they're required legally in order to pass approvals for new development, they're just piles of statements that get registered and don't really lead to any significant change. You want to comment on that?
Yes.
And
I'm going to comment.
and the other thing, and the other thing, just to quickly put on your agenda was, what about political leadership? You remember when Ed Koch was mayor, he did a lot of dumb things, but one good thing he did was go after dog poop. And
so
it worked.
Brennan is doing that now. Do you know the new thing that was just introduced? I'll talk to it.
Okay. Thank you.
Though that's not my area, but Julie Menon, who happens to be my council person, they're now having dispensers that will dispense plastic bags or bags for people to use for poop. And there are signs now in my neighborhood that are urging people to be cautious about it, but check Julie Menon's office and you'll get filled in on that. All right. Now, environmental impact statements, since we've worked on it. When a new development comes up, there is a requirement that the people in charge of that development conduct a study that will demonstrate no adverse impacts on the community because of that hospital building coming up, the apartment building, or as I know, the waste transfer station. And so an environmental impact statement is to be written to assess, and I'll spend the time on noise, will putting of this new structure increase the ambient noise levels in that community? In the construction phase, will there be an effect on the noise levels in that community? I have not yet seen an environmental impact statement that has said, yes, there'll be an impact. And this is what we should do to try to lessen it. Have you ever seen one written that way? I haven't. So when
No,
I
never
get
have.
into, so here's how I get into the picture. Communities ask me to analyze environmental impact statements. That's how we got involved. To analyze environmental impact statements to see if they've been properly addressing the issue of noise. And I had to get pretty much involved during the Giuliani administration. And I tell people, I have been appointed by Giuliani, to grow NYC. And yet, if his people supported an environmental statement that showed no impact, and the community asked me to question it, Giuliani just said that Dr. Bronsaft is going to question it. You're going to just have to deal with it. He was really very fair-minded. So what I suggest for the communities, when an environmental impact statement accompanies a new site development, that you and your community, the other community members, get together so that, yes, this may cost you, not that much, because too many of us don't charge the kinds of fees my daughters who are attorneys say we should. But you could challenge an environmental impact statement to the extent that you can say that it has not adequately assessed the impact and show the shortcomings. I know this puts a burden on communities, and that's when I do get involved, when communities ask me to check environmental impact statements. But I urge all residents that if they feel that the structure being planned for their area may have an adverse impact and you have to demonstrate this. I mean, this isn't just a hunch or a hint, and you look at the statement that has been approved, you have a right to hire your own person to question it. Does that help a bit?
Yes,
Thank you.
Okay,
Absolutely.
thank you. Okay, I see Francine Egger-Sider, Veronica Conant, is it? And then I'm gonna come back to Doris Weisberg, who says she still has a question. So, hi, Francine.
Hi. Thank you
Hi.
for a wonderful talk. I really enjoyed that. I live on the Upper West Side, and right now I'm surrounded between construction all around me. But I was wondering what can be done about the helicopter traffic over
Oh,
New York
okay.
City nowadays.
Oh,
It is
okay.
just proliferating and
Oh.
maddening.
Are you a member of Stop the Chop?
No, I'm
Have
not.
you ever heard of Stop the Chop?
Never heard
Oh.
of it.
Okay, we have one of the most activist helicopter groups, I have to say, helicopter noise groups in the nation. And if you contact me, I will, just go to Stop the Chop. You could
Okay.
do it. Melissa Elstein is the person whom I'm in contact with.
Okay.
And Stop the Chop is looking for people to work with them. They have legislation they've introduced. They have strong supporters, and they are one of the best groups nationwide. So Stop the Chop, New York, it's Stop the Chop, MYNJ, and the person you can address is Elstein, Elstein, Melissa Elstein. Melissa Elstein, but you will remember Stop the Chop, New York, NYNJ. Wonderful group, get involved.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, Veronica Conant?
I'm going to turn everyone into activists. You see?
Yeah, I noticed that. Research is not enough.
That's what I did with my students.
That's what we do. We are activists. Okay, Veronica.
Yes, I'm trying to unmute. Yeah,
You're-
Veronica Conant, and I actually was the president of a community block association trying to stop the noise on my block, which is in a mixed residential commercial neighborhood across from MoMA. Now you realize that MoMA, I moved here in 2000, and that was when the new noise code was already being discussed. The then new noise codes, which took another few years until it became accepted. But the problem is that we have the sanitation department picks up the residential garbage, and they are no problem, wonderfully quiet. However, there are all these tall commercial buildings which have private carting company, and this is the problem. The city I wish the city should be made them into part of the city sanitation department for everybody to have their pickup by the city, because the city ones are much quieter than the huge private carting companies, which go on for like an hour, for a large skyscraper picking up garbage, or 45 minutes or half an hour, whatever it is. And then every demolition, everything is on the street. And this is my complaint, which I want to bring up, because this is an environmental issue, exactly your issue. They go across from our bedrooms for hours, demolishing construction from inside construction, of an apartment, not an whatever. Some of them are condominiums, some of them are the part of the museum, when the museum redoes a section. Now the museum has 3 loading docks. And instead of combining a loading dock where the trucks can do it inside and do things, they back in and back out. Now, at the time of the block association, we had an agreement with the museum, and they ventilated one of the loading docks in order to do everything inside, and it's got forgotten. That was 20 years ago, or whatever, 18 years ago. So what to do in such a situation? Help is needed. Now, I spoke to Keith Powers, who is our city council member, And I went to the community board at that time. In fact, our block association got involved in that noise code. When the noise code was rewritten, nothing was accepted. Unfortunately, the lobbyists were dictating a lot of that noise code. So that's one problem. And the second problem is the private karting companies don't have any regulation, no standards, and no proper regulations. They come day and night, and a lot of it all over the night. Yes. So
Yes.
this is the problem, kind of how to mix.
Now you have a community group. You do have a group.
I resigned after 6 years, which was in 2010.
Oh, so you're
From
not part of the
2004
group?
to 2010. I let now others do it.
Ah, okay, but there
Unfortunately,
is a
don't.
group
We
you
did a
could
lot of
reach.
things. We have a sound meter, for example, which
Right.
but so this is a problem.
And you've contacted Keith Powers. And
Oh,
what is he
everybody
doing?
was contacted at the time. I worked with Gail Brewer at that
But
time.
where is it now?
She was the Manhattan Borough president. So with all kinds of people, but
The problem is.
but it
return-
wasn't about
Okay,
outside
I
at
think
that time so much.
Veronica, we're gonna have to move on.
No, all I'm
because-
saying is that I would love to contact her privately. Could I contact you
Personally. I'll
so
talk.
that I could discuss some more of it with you?
Yeah,
Okay,
our-
That's
you'll
all.
give my
Thank you.
email address. I'll
Yeah.
speak to you.
a
Yes.
few
Thank
people
you.
have been
So
asking.
you have an email address I could send it to?
ALBTOR
Okay,
A Apple, L love, PTOR at AOL. Sorry. Ann.
okay, when you get a chance.
If you could put
that
it in the chat would be
put it in the
appreciated.
chat.
So put it
That's
in-
all. I don't want to hold up
I don't
everybody,
wanna
but thank
get
you so
to
much
it.
because I would love.
Okay, we're
Thank you.
gonna go to Andrea Rockower. I see you figured out how to raise your Zoom hand, Andrea. Now you have to do something else. You have to unmute. Good.
Okay, thank you so much. Arlene, thank you so much. I really appreciate all the information you provided. I used to be an avid theater goer, and I found that the over amplification in New York City theater, particularly for musicals, was just overwhelming. I used to bring earplugs with me, just those little foam things they sell at CVS or pharmacies, and it really wasn't enough. And at a routine visit to the ENT, they mentioned, well, your hearing is slightly diminished. And so now I avoid going to those presentations. I was curious, and I went online for the DEP. I think I sent them an email asking what was the decibel limit for in New York City, in the 5 boroughs, for these kinds of presentations and concerts. I didn't get any response. I don't know, do you have any thoughts on this?
Yeah, let me respond to that. That's a very difficult one. That I don't think anyone has gotten into. The only thing they tell people is, for your sake, always wear hearing protection. Always. Don't just say, I forgot, always. And unfortunately, there's some that you may not have to go to. But that as a policy, I have not really addressed, nor have I heard people, individuals talk about it, but no activism that I know of on asking them to lower it a bit. That's like asking all these hip hop bands and all to just lower the sounds. I think you're going to have to protect yourself. Unless you decide, you would have to decide to start raising some questions. So you could definitely write to DEP and say, is there anything in a code that would apply to a music venue? What we don't allow venues to do is to allow their music to come outside. That's not permitted. But within, that would be another question.
What about concerts on CUNY campuses?
Again, if the concerts you're finding there are very loud too? There, you could always make an inquiry to say that exposing the students to that level of noise is making them vulnerable to hearing loss. And that I would educate people, because one of the best things to do to try to reduce the impacts is to educate people as to the harm, and suggest that knowing that it's harmful, that you're engaging in allowing this to happen, puts you to fault for the future hearing loss of young people. You would have to be the actor. I agree. So if you want to contact me in terms of verbiage, please, I'll work
Thank
with
you
you.
very much.
You're welcome.
David Cuddlechuck. Unmute Dave.
Yes.
Okay, great.
To Ms. Rockhour's question, as soon as you're talking about something going on inside a theater or in an auditorium where our students perhaps may be listening, there are people who are working in those indoor areas or enclosed areas. They are covered by the OSHA law. And if you, in fact, speak to some of the employees who are working in that area, not the audience has, as Arlene said, had very little protection. But the workers have, in fact, a law that's enforced by OSHA. And actually, there is a reasonable level of enforcement once workers and their unions start complaining. So think about the people working there, and if you can ally with them, talk with them, and see if they or their union can raise the issue that the noise is above OSHA limits, and also it harms the people who are listening inside. So give it a try. And while I'm here, thank you, Arlene, for continuing to do your good work over the years. We worked together.
Very good point.
Decades ago.
Great work.
Yes.
Is Doris Weisberg here? And does she still have a question or comment? I don't want to. Sarah Wilkins has written in the chat. Okay. Any other comments or questions? Well, thank you so much, Arlene. You have a lot of more work ahead of you now, having spent the last hour and 15 minutes with us. But as you said, it's not enough to do, and as you demonstrated, it's not enough just to have the facts and to do the research. To change things, you have to become an activist and a leader, and you certainly are a leader in this field. So thank you for taking time to come and talk with us today. Great presentation. Great.
Arlene, if you could put your email in the chat, please.
I did.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Check it. Yeah.
And Arlene, of course, is a member of our chapter, and we've had a number of presentations given by people in our chapter. Tom Angotti, Alan Feigenberg. So if you think that you have something interesting to talk to our chapter about, let us know. It's great to have our own people headlining the meetings. So thank you. Okay, before we go to listen to Debbie and then Michael Foley, I want to make another plug for our June 10th luncheon, which you all should have gotten a memo about. And that's going to be a different kind of meeting. First of all, we'll break bread together, we'll have a little wine, we'll get to meet each other in person. But that's a meeting where we're going to call on you, if you're interested, to tell us a little bit about your retirement and anything new that you've done now that you've been retired, new talents, explorations, discoveries. We're going to give people a couple of minutes to talk to the chapter, and that's going to be the program. So if you haven't gotten that invitation, write to us and we'll make sure that you get it. Okay, so next is Debbie Bell. Debbie, are you here?
I am here.
As
Hello.
always. Okay, what do you have for us?
Happy spring, everyone. I have not a lot of information. Retiree health is still in the courts. And
Okay.
just to remind everyone, there actually are 3 active lawsuits. One is the city's appeal of Judge Frank's stopping the implementation of Aetna Medicare Advantage. That has gone through the process of, that's in the Court of Appeals, which is not the top, but the middle. That has gone through oral arguments. So at this point, we are waiting for that panel to issue a decision. That's the first one. Second one, which was filed a long time ago, was the city's lawsuit against a decision by Judge Frank earlier on that the HIP HMO rate meant that the city cannot charge retirees more for their retiree coverage than the HIP rate charges for actives. Now that goes back to when we had choices between Medicare Advantage and remaining in senior care. Who knows where this is all going to end up? So that lawsuit takes on a certain importance. That lawsuit, the middle level Court of Appeals ruled that Judge Frank was correct. So the city has appealed that to the higher court. That is still in process. There have not been oral arguments in that case. So who knows how long that will take. The third lawsuit is a lawsuit where the city and Emblem Health appealed the judgment that retirees could not be charged co-pays in senior care. Again, old news, but that's why we're not paying co-pays currently. That I'm a little less clear on. I think that is also before the middle level Court of Appeals, and has not had oral arguments. So everything is really moving very slowly, and no news. But no news is good news. It means, that we stay in traditional Medicare. If you want, you stay in senior care, and all the other health, some retirees choose other health. So everything stays the same. There has been no movement yet on active employee health care, changes in the active employee health care comprehensive benefit plan, which also affects retirees under 65 who are not yet Medicare eligible. I expect, I said this last time, but I expect there will be something forthcoming before the 1st of June, but who knows? It seems to be taking a very long time for the city to figure out what it's going to do. I will keep you posted on that. In the meantime, the city paid Medicare Part B reimbursements for 2023. What that means is, for those of you who are in TRS, you should have received the reimbursement for what you paid for Medicare Part B, which was approximately $165 a month in 2023. For you and your spouse, in TRS, you should have received that amount of money in the same bank account where your benefit is paid. TIA recipients should have received a check in the mail. If you are in TIAA and you did not receive a check in the mail from the Office of Labor Relations Employee Benefits Program for your Medicare Part B reimbursement, I suggest 2 things. 1, go on the Office of Labor Relations website, click on the Employee Benefits Program and on retiree. Make sure they have your current mailing address. And 2, make sure that you properly filled out the paperwork for Medicare Part B when you retired. What happens with the regular Medicare Part B reimbursement is we are all charged those of us on Medicare, are all charged the same amount. So we don't have to file every year. You just file initially, and the city, as long as you're alive, the city will pay you in April of, and it's for the prior calendar. Someone in the chat asks about NYCERS. I believe NYCERS Medicare Part B should have been paid at the same time, but I'm not sure of the month. My reading of the Employee Benefits Program website is the following. Reimbursements were mailed out in April. They didn't say to TRS, they didn't say to this, they didn't, that just that the so I assume that means that the NYCERS reimbursements were paid to the account for NYCERS where your pension benefit is paid. I'll get to IRMA in a minute. IRMA's more complicated. Okay, so if you didn't get it, you've got to follow up with the Employee Benefits Program, either about your correct address, or just to make sure that they have a record of your being eligible for the filing. I will say that last year, my husband's thing was in they didn't have a record of my husband's filing, even though he had filed it. I made him file it. So we just refiled, and then eventually they pay the check. Okay. Now, IRMA. Some of you, every year, the Social Security Administration sends a letter in November saying, for the upcoming calendar year, here is your Social Security benefit. Here is how much it will be reduced to pay for Medicare Part B. That's what you're being reimbursed. Here's how much it will be reduced for IRMA. That is, if your income, if your income is high enough, they will charge you an additional charge for Medicare Part B. What they do is they look at for your 2024 IRMA, they look at your 2022 income taxes. So this letter that you receive in November every year, which you must keep, put in a file, put it in plastic, keep it, says, here's your Social Security benefits for the next year. Here's how much will be taken out for Medicare Part B. Here's how much will be taken out for IRMA. Both of those amounts are reimbursed to you and to your spouse if they're in Medicare by the city. There's sometimes a third line, which is Medicare Part D as in Debbie, IRMA. That's the drugs. There is no reimbursement for that. For those of us in Medicare, our retiree drug benefit with the PSC CUNY Welfare Fund is a Part D benefit. And for those of us with high enough incomes 2 years ago, we get charged an additional amount for that benefit. That you don't get reimbursed. So let's go back up to IRMA. Every year, because your income changes every year, even if it doesn't, but based on the theory that it does change every year, the city requires that you submit every year documentation of what you paid for IRMA in the prior year. And they don't begin to process this until after April, when the Medicare Part B reimbursements are paid. So if you have IRMA deducted from your Social Security benefit, there is a form up on the OLR website which you can fill out concerning your application for reimbursement for whatever you paid for IRMA during 2023. What you need to have also, in addition to filling out that form, is you need to have your 1099 from Social Security for 2023, which documents what you actually paid. And you need to have your letter from Social Security from November of 2022, which says, here's what your Social Security benefits will be for 2023, and here's what your IRMA will be. And you need to have both of those documents for your spouse as well if you apply for IRMA reimbursement for your spouse. Is that crystal clear? There is actually an explanation on the Employee Benefits Program website, and the chapter will include this information again in the upcoming newsletter. But for those of you who are concerned about IRMA, the form to fill out is there. You have to do it every year, and you have to have the additional documents that I explained. And that is my report, Madam Chairwoman.
Thank you, Madam Debbie Bell. Any questions for Debbie? Debbie also put together a one-pager on IRMA, and if you write to us at the retiree email, you know, I can send that to you. Questions? Jack Hammond. Jack?
When do you have all these documents and you fill out this form and send it in? What month?
What's the deadline you were asking?
Well, not only what is the first opportunity? What is the time that's optimal?
The first opportunity is now because the form is available, and you should have all those documents already.
So we go to the
They
OLR for the.
They don't pay until I think the third week in October.
Uh-huh.
So, and the thing about IRMA is that there is a grace period. You can go back 3 years. So, you know, if you forget and you don't remember till somebody asks at the October retiree chapter meeting, what about IRMA? Oh my God, I didn't file it. You can file it. It'll just take a while to get paid. That's all.
So we go to OLR for the that form, then the other two things we should already have.
Yes.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
Okay.
Let me answer a question that was in the chat.
Yeah.
Oh, Amy Burkhoff has her hand up. Okay, never mind. Go on. Go ahead, Francine.
Okay, yes, Francine.
I know there's no $15 copay for doctor's visit. Is there a copay for a hospital surgery of $50? Or is that also not enforced right now?
I think that is a deductible.
Oh, okay.
Maybe Michael Foley can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think there is. And I don't think that was affected by the legal decision, because I think the copays for outpatient stuff was new.
Okay, thanks.
Palmer and Francis Tomer.
Yes, Debbie, I notice when I get some statements from Caremark, they have the medication, the total price, then what the plan pays, and then what some other company pays, which I'm assuming is that the secondary Medicare drug thing. But I don't pay the IRMA anymore, and yet they're taking from the secondary drug plan rather than the plan.
I'm going to leave that to Michael Foley to deal with, because I'm not an expert on the prescription drug ins and outs.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. Let me just probe that a little bit. Your prescription drug plan is from whom?
Caremark. It's the
Caremark.
CVS Caremark. That's the mail order.
CVS.
Okay. So do you utilize the welfare funds CVS? So CVS Caremark. I got you. I was misunderstood. I was not hearing correctly. Yes. And so what is the issue you're running into with Caremark?
I get the statement that how the total price of the medication, then it's one column says what the plan pays, which I'm assuming is the CUNY, PSC CUNY plan. And then the other column is what your responsibility is, and then what another plan pays, which I'm assuming is the Medicare secondary Part D plan, that if I pay into that, but I don't pay into that anymore.
You should. And in fact, you shouldn't be on CVS Caremark. You should be on CVS SilverScript at this point as a retiree.
Well, Silver Script sends it, but then it's Caremark. I
Hmm.
mean, I get a statement from Silver Script,
Okay,
but monthly I get another statement from Care. When I get the drug, that's what it is. In the envelope with the medication,
yeah,
it's Caremark.
yeah.
And they have one price. And then my monthly statement from Silver Script is another price.
Francis, I have a suggestion.
Yes.
Because all of us have these kind of quirky individual things that may have to do with our pharmacy, may have to do with the coverage, et cetera. Take a picture of the offensive prescription statement and send it to Michael at his, he'll post his email address in the chat. I think, that's the best way to understand what it is you're seeing and try to figure out what it is.
Okay, thank you, Debbie.
Yep, that's okay.
Amy Burkhoff.
So thank you for trying to help us navigate all of this stuff that is very confusing, especially to those of us that are relatively recently retired. So I was retired as of August last year, and so I am paying IRMA, but I won't have a letter from 2022 because that was before I was retired, and I'm not taking Social Security benefits yet, so I'm just paying.
Oh.
So will I be able to apply for a reimbursement for IRMA without a letter from 2022?
How old are you? You're over 60. You're on Medicare?
Yeah, I'm 68, so.
Yeah. You know what you should do is you should, I am not sure. You should be able to get reimbursed. What the question is, what documentation you need. I will ask, and I will, unless Michael knows, but I will ask the Office of Labor Relations what documentation you need if you're not taking Social Security benefits yet, but are paying IRMA. And we will either put something in the newsletter or let you know or whatever. But I'll try to figure it out.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
Okay. Mike Frank. Unmute, Mike.
Sorry.
Okay, great.
Debbie, this is a question about what the in-service people can expect or what's in store for them. My understanding is that the city wants to reduce its costs for in-service people by 10%. So first question is how will that be done, or how could that be done? Second question, or second part of the question, I understand this reduction in costs is a joint effort of the city and the MLC, the Municipal Labor Committee, of which our union is a part. What exactly is the relation between the two of them, the two bodies, on this effort? Can you be specific about that? Because the MLC is a bit murky. And I assume it has not challenged this. So can you talk about the relation with some clarity, which the MLC generally does not? Thank you.
Right. Clarity and MLC are not words that generally go together in one sentence. So the in-service health plan predates collective bargaining in New York City. There is not in municipal contracts, there is not language about in-service health coverage. There's language about retiree health coverage. There's language about various modifications, but not about in-service health coverage. That is provided in the administrative code of the city of New York. Once collective bargaining began, and all eligible New York City employees are represented by a union, one or other union, most of which are part of the Municipal Labor Coalition, which dates back to the, just being, I'm using round numbers here, but dates back basically to the fiscal crisis. There was a determination on the part of the unions that it made sense, since they were all covered by the same plan, to pressure the city to negotiate with them as a group, as a coalition. The city at, 50 years ago was not initially terribly receptive to this, except that it was in a fiscal crisis and needed to make some deals in order to get itself out of it. In fact, over time, there has been in the courts an affirmation of the fact that the city must bargain with the unions about healthcare, and the unions have continued to choose to have the MLC be the collective representative of the municipal unions with regard to healthcare. Okay, that's the 5-second history of why we are where we are, and why health. When we talk about health, we talk about the Municipal Labor Council Committee. Currently, the city, in bargaining, in the same way they said to the unions, we need to save money on retiree health insurance, and here's how we're going to do it. The city said we need to save money on active employee and pre-65 retiree health insurance, and to do that, we need to find a new vendor, a new insurance company, or a different contract. I mean, in fact, Emblem applied again. So they issued the equivalent of an RFP. They got a bunch of responses to that. The collective union position is, we've got to be part of whatever reviews you're doing in order to bring in a new insurance provider. So there is a little committee, of which PSC is not a part, that has city representatives and union representatives. It's loosely referred to as the tripartite committee, which has been working for the past year and a half to review the responses that came into the RFP, of which only about 3 were substantive enough. I mean, this is a huge health plan. It covers, several 100,000 people. And most insurance companies don't have the capacity to provide that kind of coverage in the way that the city is used to. So since the fall, there have basically been 2 competing plans. One is Aetna, and the second is a combination of Emblem, which is GHI renamed, plus United Healthcare. United Healthcare is another behemoth insurance company. They are the ones that have the AARP plan and many other plans, etc. So we've spent, I'm very much outside this. I don't know details. Why is the MLC involved? The MLC doesn't necessarily have to say, yes, you must save $10 million. But what they will say is, we must be part of a decision-making process to choose a new provider. I think the implication of all this, Mike, and this is Debbie speaking, this is not anybody else. The implication of all this is that there's some acceptance that part of this process will lead to the city saving money, or should lead to the city saving. There's an acceptance of that. As to an acceptance of the number, I don't think that exists. Anybody with an ounce of sense about healthcare costs would say that the number that the city targeted to save is totally unrealistic. Also, the truth is that there will be a decision at some point. A recommendation from this tripartite committee. It may be that the MLC will argue against it. I think that the MLC would like to see Emblem continue. And, the city health plan is a very, very, very large share of Emblem's book of business. The other thing I will say is that the in-service employee health plan is not excessively costly. It is, there are a lot of economies of scale because there's so many people in it. And, if you look around the country, New York, healthcare in New York is expensive relative to many other parts of the country. But in the context of New York, the city health plan is not excessively expensive. So that was a sort of argument that PSC made early on to say, why are you doing this? And saying you have to save all this money because it's what the city spends now, given the coverage, the range of coverage and the number of people, it's not expensive. So how do they think they're going to save money? Well, that's an interesting question. Here's, based on our collective experience with the Medicare Advantage fight, I worry that, one, there will be more prior authorizations required before people can have scans, etc. That there will be a range of different expense levels for different hospitals, so that the more expensive hospitals like Weill Cornell and Presbyterian and NYU Langone may charge higher copays for hospital-based services. Now, the problem, of course, is that hospitals have bought up everything. So it's not like you can go to a doctor, for outpatient care, and he or she is in a standalone practice. They're usually in practices controlled by hospitals. I would commend to you that the myths and facts that have been posted on the PSC website. We've been trying to anticipate what members may face once a plan is proposed. And some of these issues are discussed. It's not a long document, but it's there. It was sent out this week in the PSC, I think 2 or 3 weeks ago. And I commend that to you because that goes into somewhat more detail. That was a long-winded answer, Mike, but it's a long-winded issue.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Debbie. Erwin, did you have your hand up? Erwin Yelowitz? Did you want to ask a question? Can't hear you, Erwin. You have to unmute. I don't know. I thought I saw Erwin's hand.
Yes, I did.
Oh, yes.
I wanted to, Debbie came to this point before, just before she closed, that the Municipal Labor Committee and the city have disagreed on which company should make this offer that Mike had referred to. The MLC wanted the Emblem United Healthcare option, and the city is apparently favoring the Aetna one. So as I understand it, from what I've read elsewhere outside of the PSC, that this is the sticking point at the moment, that the MLC does have to negotiate this with the city, at least to choose the provider, and that they can't agree not only on the specifics of the plan, but they can't agree on the provider who's going to provide the plan. So I think, Debbie, that you did mention that, but I wanted to stress that.
Okay.
Right. I mean, at some point in this, I believe this is me. This is only me talking. I believe the city will propose to accept a vendor. Whether the MLC goes along with it, we shall see. I mean, it's, this is
politics.
The other thing I think we should all keep in mind is that these companies, these national health insurance provider companies, are moving further and further away from health care and more in the direction of bank. In other words, it's much more about money and controlling the flow of money for the service of healthcare than it is about ensuring that high quality healthcare is what's available. And that's a trend that means we retirees are going to have to be even more active in pressing the federal government to, I mean, first of all, pressing the federal government to ensure we don't have a government that doesn't care about, what high-priced insurance companies do. And then pressing the federal government and pressing the Centers for Medicaid and Medicare Services to ride herd more aggressively over Medicare Advantage plans and also over health plans generally. And also for all of us to take a serious push for a feasible single payer approach to healthcare. And I say feasible because I truly don't believe that one state can do it alone. I mean, I'm just expressing my own prejudices here. It has to be a sort of federal push. And that's going to be a long, hard battle. But I'm concerned that it's given all the other assaults on women's health, et cetera, that's kind of fallen down a little bit on the priority whiteboard that's out there. Sorry, I'm editorializing, Anne. I apologize.
It's okay. Thank you so much, Debbie. Always a wealth of information. And let's see, Michael Foley, do you have anything to say to us today?
Of course I do.
Well, do go right ahead.
Hi, everybody. Real happy to be with you today. I'm Michael Foley. I'm the Director of Communications for the PSC CUNY Welfare Fund, which hopefully you all know provides your supplemental benefits, your drug, dental, hearing, and vision. So in keeping with today's theme and playing off of Arlene's wonderful presentation, let's talk about hearing aids. So about 1 month ago, the fund changed hearing aid providers. We went from Hear USA to a company called True Hearing. Everyone should have gotten in the mail a mailing along with a glossy flyer that looks like this. And there's updated information on our website as well. We're very happy to make this change. The fund does not change providers very often. And when we do, it's for two reasons. There's a distinct benefit to our members and a benefit to the finances of the welfare fund, because we are a nonprofit and we want to make sure that we are financially stable. True Hearing, we evaluated closely True Hearing's presentation, and we decided to go with True Hearing upon the approval of our Board of Trustees. There is no diminishment in service from Hear USA to True Hearing. In fact, there's a better level of hearing aid available now to our members, to all of you, at the highest end level of hearing aids. So in other words, the benefit remains the same, $1,500 per ear, and there is a premium level hearing aid that, if you go with the brand name, would cost you out of pocket about $300 per ear. But True Hearing has a so-called house brand, so to speak, and that house brand is available within that $1,500 per ear cost. So you could leave your audiologist office and your True Hearing office with a premium level hearing aid at no cost. So we were pleased about that, to hear that, and that's one of the reasons we made the change. There's plenty of True Hearing offices throughout the 5 boroughs and throughout the country. And like I said, there's no diminishment in benefit. So if you're used to, and also you can, if you're used to a Hear USA office, you can remain going to that Hear USA office as well. Hear USA and True Hearing sort of exist under the same corporate umbrella, so there's no issue there. One word of warning, as you know, hopefully the benefit is a once every 36-month benefit. So once every 3 years, you can obtain new hearing aids. If you have received new hearing aids within the last 3 years, you have to stay on that schedule. So moving to True Hearing doesn't sort of stop the clock again, and you can't go get a new set of hearing aids now. You have to wait until that 3-year period of time is up. You can, though, get a yearly exam, though. Listening to Arlene talk, I think, as we all get a little older, I think it's a good time to get our hearing checked, and you still have access to that yearly exam benefit. I'm curious, and I'll ask it of everyone here today, has anyone had the opportunity to visit a True Hearing office within the last month or so? Anybody?
I'm assuming you want feedback.
A little bit, yeah. So
Yeah, Myra had her hand raised, I think, for something else. Audrey Cohen, are you saying yes,
Audrey,
Let's-
if you want to unmute yourself.
So I have some hearing aids from Hear USA, and
Yes.
it's not clear to me whether you can get it service for free after the first year.
Yep,
That free service is for the
Yes.
3-year period?
that's right. So you have that 3-year warranty. Now, keep in mind that that warranty stays with Hear USA. That warranty does not transfer to True Hearing. So if you need that hearing aid serviced, you go back to your Hear USA office. And if there's any issue whatsoever, just contact me, contact us here at the Welfare Fund, and we'll advocate for you in case there's any confusion.
It
But
could be
you bring up
it could be any Hear USA office. It doesn't have to be the one in Manhattan that I
That's
started
correct.
with.
That's
Thank you very
correct.
much.
Yeah.
Bob Cermelli, any feedback? Bob says he went to a True Hearing office.
I'd love to hear about it, Bob.
Okay, well, maybe not today, but
Okay.
Myra.
Hi, Myra. How are you? Oh, Bob, you with us?
Oh, there's Bob. Okay.
I'm sorry. Okay, I went in April and I got the top of the line for about $300 per ear.
Yep.
So it was a great deal. I
Good deal.
recommend it.
They knew who you were. They knew everything.
Oh,
Everything
no
seemed
problem.
okay?
You know, you
Customer
call ahead of
service
time.
okay?
They find you and set up you call True Hearing ahead of time.
That's
They
right.
set up an appointment. They do everything. So, and they're very nice and they only ring twice and they pick up. So there's no waiting.
Okay. All right.
Susan
At least so
Foreman?
far.
Yeah. So
Susan.
what I would ask,
Anyway, we'll see what
what I
happens
would
going
ask of
forward.
folks
It was
as
great.
the week, as the months go by, and you have the opportunity or have the need to visit a True Hearing office, I would love to hear about it. We're probably going to do a survey at some point, but I would love to hear about your experiences, good, bad, or indifferent. So keep that in mind, please.
Susan
Myra, how are you?
Foreman? Oh, okay, Myra, sorry. Susan, I'll get to you. Myra Haben, how are you doing?
Hi, okay, just quick, I've spoken to Mike about a problem with Guardian, which has never happened
Yes.
before. I'm out of network. I had major dental work done in the last couple of years. My dentist told me what needed to be doing. I've gotten the fraction that Guardian plays, no problem. I've got an $18,000 bill that has been turned down by Guardian for the work that the dentist did. I have had 3 appeals from the dentist. Mike sent me to someone named Anna who handles dental. I found a very old document from Guardian, which basically said, if the dentist does any more than $300 worth of work, you need prior authorization. This has never happened before, and I'm out with an $18,000 bill of which I've paid $16,000. If Guardian even paid, they would only pay $2,000. I understood I would not get a lot of money. I've gotten 0 money, and this has been going on since August. So I just wanted to put that out there because it has not been solved. I was told to call Guardian. Guardian said call the Welfare Fund. I spoke to Mike in person. I spoke to Anna, and I've gotten nothing. So I just want to put that out there as something that's a real problem for dental.
Yeah, thank you, Myra, and I enjoyed meeting with you the other day. Let's have another discussion soon. We are aware of the issue. We are discussing it with Guardian as well. So why don't you and I get back together and I can update you.
Susan Foreman, you're raising your hand. You have to unmute, Susan. Are you looking for help? Can I all right. There you go. Okay.
I have hearing aids that I got a few years ago, probably at Hear USA, if that was our option.
Yes.
So should I just stay with them?
In essence, yes. So go back and look at the paperwork, see, or yeah, okay. If you can recall specifically when you got those hearing aids, if it was 2.5 years ago, then I would say in the next 6 months, get a sense, or maybe go in for an exam and get a sense if you need those hearing aids, if you need a new pair, if you need them adjusted. anything like that. If you're happy with what you have, that's great. Stay with Hear USA as far as any kind of repairs or exams or things like that. So Hear USA will honor the terms of your arrangement with them within the past 3 years.
I'm guessing that I have here, because I paid for the hearing aids, but I don't pay. I mean, I go for an exam and I walk out of the office and they don't talk to me except to say bye.
Okay. So I would say this, as you think you get close to having gone 3 years since that last purchase of hearing aids, keep in mind, you now have a new company. And if you feel you want new hearing aids, if you're not satisfied with the ones you have, after that 3 years has passed, you have the new opportunity to maybe upgrade. So think about that. And what I always tell people is know about your benefits and use those benefits. And so we do have this improved benefit with True Hearing. So when that 3-year period has passed, you now have the opportunity to get perhaps a better pair of hearing aids.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, Amy Burkhoff.
Thank you. This is a follow-up on a question from the last time we talked about this. I got hearing aids through an audiologist at Hear USA in last November.
Okay.
And one of the mics in one of the hearing aids seems to have gone kaput. And
Okay.
last time, I believe I was told to make an appointment with the new company, that I should go to see the same audiologist. But what you're telling me now sounds like, see, I'm a procrastinator and it always pays off. What you're
Yeah.
telling me now sounds like
Okay. Yeah, Amy, I'm sorry, that was bad information then. So you should be going to Hear USA for hearing aids that you obtained within the last 3 years at Hear USA. They will honor that 3-year warranty. If they give you any trouble, call me.
Okay. And so I can just make the appointment this time directly with the audiologist.
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
great.
You'll probably have to remind them a little bit. If any issues come up, just say, hey, the welfare fund that I belong to recently changed vendors, but I'm a sort of a grandfathered sort of Hear USA person, so that kind of thing. So they should have you in the system.
Thank you very much.
Gloria Paulus.
Yeah, this is real quick, Michael. I just want to just comment briefly on the prescription plan. I just want to commend the PSC. I just recently had some glasses, new glasses after a long time, and the doctor was beside himself. He could not believe the amazing benefits that the PSC offers. He says no one else offers what they offer, so he just went and checked everything off when he gave me my plan. So I just want you to know that you are impressing somebody out there with the.
I appreciate that, Gloria. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
That's wonderful to hear.
Great. Audrey, you have your hand up again? Okay, Audrey Cohen.
Yes, so I just wanted to tell everybody about my experience at Hear USA here in Manhattan. So the audiologist wanted to sell me the most expensive pair of hearing aids. And I think it's only because I brought with me the piece of paper from PSC Welfare Fund showing what the PSC Welfare Fund would pay, that I ended up getting the pair that I didn't have to pay anything for. So I'm just saying that it would be a good idea when you go to the audiologist to bring the piece of paper from PSC Welfare that, actually shows you can get these hearing aids for free, because the audiologist would like to sell you something more expensive. That was just my experience.
Okay.
Excellent point. Excellent point.
Very helpful. Jack Hammond, and I think you'll be our last question for the day.
Yeah, I put this in chat, but I guess people haven't been looking at the chat.
I have.
I have a hearing aids from Hear USA.
Yes.
And I lost one of them, and so I have to replace it. I guess I go back to the same place, the Hear USA, and get the same thing. Okay, and the benefit. How do I, based on what Audrey just said, how do I know how much they can then do it, whether I have to charge, whether I have to pay for it, or what the rule on that is?
You won't be able to. They won't charge you. So there is a replacement benefit that you should still be eligible for. So if they give you any trouble, again, give me a call, Jack.
Right. Okay. And one quick question: I cannot find the out-of-network vision benefit form on the website, and somebody who I got on the phone at the welfare fund said I had to go to Davis Vision to get that form.
Yeah, we've sort of, we like our members to sort of go directly to the provider for reimbursement. In other words, the provider is uniquely set up to handle the reimbursement process. So we direct them to the vendor for both the form to fill out and to mail it back, and then the provider sends you the reimbursement. It sounds a little weird.
I
like,
I left my name and address on a recording in response to their message, and it was told I would be sent it. And I never got it. This was several weeks ago.
All right, Jack, I'll look into it.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, well, thank you, Michael, and thank you, Debbie, and thank you, Arlene, and thank you, everybody from the retiree chapter. I really hope that you will come and meet me and your other elected leaders and meet each other at the retiree luncheon. That's going to be on June 10th at John Jay. If you haven't gotten the invite and you want to come, please email me, email us. Thanks, Bonnie, for helping run the meeting, Sam for helping run the meeting, and thanks to all of you for your good questions and your participation. So, do I hear a motion to adjourn? Yes, I see nodding heads. Okay, guys, see you in June. Bye.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Arlene.
Thank you.